Oh, hello there. Jamie here from Thanos Loves Una, comics and video games. We here on the show like to joke around from time to time, and I admit sometimes we take it a little bit too far. To give you an update, Doom bought me this peace offering after sending me to some kind of a crazy dimension before Christmas. It is a wonderful Thanos Loves Una mug, but his actions were a sign of the deeper, more disturbing problems that he's been carrying around lately. So we both decided the best thing for both of us would be for him to take some time to figure things out. Doom, we wish you luck. We will miss you. And most of all, once you've figured it out, come back and be our camera guy again.
Did you know that?
The manual for this rare copy of Mega Man for Game Gear is worth almost as much as the game itself on average. The box is worth over double. A box-only sale in July 2020 went for over $1,000.
Well, now you know.
Red Bull. Beer. Collectors, while I contemplate what to drink during the filming of this episode, I thought I would quickly chime in to say that this episode is really crazy, like super important if you've ever considered sending your video games in for professional grading. Like ultra super mega important. And besides, my dog, Old Man Sunny, makes a brief cameo appearance. See if you can spot him. Talk to y'all soon. Oh, bull beer. Today we will continue our conversation on marrying as it pertains to collectibles. In comic collecting, marrying is the practice of replacing damaged or missing pages of one comic with the pages of another. In video game collecting, marrying is the practice of taking a loose game and repatriating it with an original copy of its box, manual, or other printed material. Last episode, we discussed marrying comic book pages with a very clear message from the Earl Grey-born Coldwater, otherwise known as T. Earl Grey Cold. I decree that comic books shall never be allowed to marry.
T. Earl Grey.
Earl Grey, you're now the new camera guy, so assume your position. Over there. Quiet. Video game collectors have been picking up missing parts to their games for years. You may wonder where these extra game pieces are coming from. Well, first off, kids are notoriously bad at keeping their toys together, so there's that. But another big source of missing game pieces were the long-lost video game rental stores. Remember Blockbuster? In the old days, we used to have stores like Blockbuster, where you could rent movies and video games. Going through the store was a real pleasure, wandering through the aisles of movies and games, seeing the covers and reading the descriptions on the back. These stores served as modern-day marketplaces where we would go with family and friends and run into other family and friends and socialize, just like the ancient markets of Rome, where everyone gathered to purchase exotic goods and foreign luxuries. This is a lost art these days. We used to take time to carefully make our rental choices. Once you left the store, the rental was yours until the next night. You had no other choices. Nowadays, Netflix, Amazon, and Hulu have made us complacent. We no longer invest our time in the media because if it doesn't grab our attention in the first 30 seconds, we can instantly switch to hundreds of other choices. In any case, stores like Blockbuster would buy thousands of games each year, and over time, they would end up with hundreds of extra game parts. For example, these stores would keep the game boxes, manuals, and in-game promotional items, and rent only the cartridge or the game disc. On the flip side, if they included these items in the rental, they usually didn't care if only the game was returned. In many cases, these items later became available on places like eBay to eager collectors looking to complete their game collections. But as we will soon see, this type of collecting behavior may have been in vain. Earl Grey, what do you say about marrying the parts of a complete in-box video game together?
I decree that video games shall sometimes be allowed to marry.
And I would tend to agree with that too. But it's complicated. And there is one very important lesson that you'll need to learn in this episode, whether you're an experienced collector or whether this is the first time you've collected a video game. over the years, collectors have never paid attention to the myriad of different game variations there are out there. Listen, we're going to do a case study on the Black Box Mario for the Nintendo Entertainment System. It's going to blow your mind. It's coming up. But just think about it. Every game that you've ever bought will have a collector's edition, a regular edition, a greatest hits edition. They might have different codes on them depending on what region they're released in. If you buy a game in Canada, it's going to have French on it versus the ones that you buy in the US. Anyway, us collectors in the past would just piece together these complete in-box games and think that everything was cool. Frankensteining games together will soon be looked upon the same way that marrying pages to a comic book does now. Wata Games, one of the premier video game grading companies, has started labeling their cases with IMP. IMP stands for Improperly Married Part. That dust sleeve with the Nintendo label that doesn't belong? That TM instead of the circle R. That Target or Walmart exclusive box? Do you remember the purple label on the graded comic from the last video? We talked briefly about how negative these colored labels are seen in the collecting community. There are several label colors for comics, and they all mean different things. And actually, the purple label on this book came from the restoration done on that comic. The restoration simply took precedence over the married page that CGC thought this book included. Books with no restoration but married pages would generally have received a green or qualified colored label. This new IMP designation is the video game equivalent to a green or qualified label in comics. It is assigned to the collector that the parts of this game are not original, and if they choose to invest in this collectible, they should adjust the fair market value accordingly. Let's dive into a case study. This is a Super Mario box variant guide published by Wata Games. I'll start by scrolling through all 11 different box variants. In 1985, Nintendo tested the North American markets with a limited release of 17 black box titles for the Nintendo Entertainment System, or NES. These were the first ever North American releases, so they are very sought after by collectors. These test games were not sealed in shrink wrap. Instead, Nintendo used a matted paper sticker over the box opening as a cheaper method of sealing their games. Later versions would use a higher quality glossy sticker, and later still, Nintendo would start shrink wrapping their games. They also had perforated hang tabs on the back so stores could hang them on display. Reception for the games was strong, so Nintendo ramped up production and began selling in other North American markets and adjusted their box art as they went. At the same time, Nintendo was aggressively trying to protect their product with trademarks. This meant that some early box art had no mention of trademark, while some included the trademark indicator TM, and others included the registered trademark indicator circle R, all depending on what stage in the trademark process they were at. Further still, Super Mario went through other revisions, including various codes that Nintendo added to the front and back of the boxes, and a change in the style of their seal of quality from circular to oval-shaped. As a result, over the life of the NES, we would see 11 different box variants of Super Mario. It is box variants like these that Wata is now grading for, and marrying the wrong box with the wrong manual or the wrong cartridge will net you the IMP label when you get your game graded. Gone are the days of picking up spare parts to complete your game. Collectors now have to be aware of the history of their game and pay close attention to variants of any kind. Looking at my copy of Super Mario Bros., we see the trademark indicator, round seal of quality, and revision A indicator on the front of the box, 2 special codes on the back of the box, and no perforated hang tab. This indicates that this is the 8th box variant of the game, which puts its release between January 1988 and March 1989. Now, I bought this game as a complete in box, but that's not to say that parts weren't married together before I bought it. Remember that the manual and game also have their own variants, so if I wanted to get this game graded, it would be important to carefully check each component before sending it off. The good news is that as long as the collectible is repatriated in the same way that it would have looked on the date of release, then nobody's going to care. And that is one of the big differences between marrying parts of a video game together with marrying pages into a comic book. But, and this is a big but, not everyone is aware of the subtle differences between box, game, and manual variants. Okay, final thoughts. As much as I hate this, as much as I hate that I'm going to have to go through my entire video game collection and look for I still think it's the right thing to do. A complete in-game box should have all the original parts. And if they are married, then they should be the precise replacements so that it is impossible to tell the difference.
I would tend to agree.
Shut up, Earl Grey. God, I miss Doom.